really wanted to involve readers, because readers are the reason this became a movie. They're the reason, the book was selling. And so who better to get on board? Yeah, they got to read the very first version with me. It was the first time I read it too. And then we sat around in a room and told Justin what they hated and told him what they liked. And let me tell you, he listened. They listened. These people right here who were part of that process are a big hand and how close this stayed with the book. So thank you.
Blake Lively wanted to sanction Melissa Nathan over what she claimed were improper redactions. But when the documents came out, it turned out the redactions Melissa made weren't even that serious. In fact, Blake had already received those exact same files from other sources. So honestly, there wasn't much that Melissa was trying to hide. Still, that small disagreement over redactions blew up into a full motion for sanctions, demanding that Melissa hand over the documents again, and so on. Now, in Blake's team's letter to the judge opposing this motion, they attached a long email chain. And at the very end of that chain, Blake's attorneys basically told Wayfair that they had no right to bring up discovery issues anymore, because fact discovery was already closed. They also pointed out that Wayfair never filed a motion to compel, meaning there was never a court order to begin with. So, in their view, everything Wayfair was asking for was late, invalid, and unnecessary. Of course, Wayfair fired right back, using Blake's own words against her. They argued that if Blake's side can deny them discovery on those grounds, then the same rule should apply here. But here's where it gets interesting, because those very same documents also revealed that Blake's own team was fighting over her production, including things like the 30-point agreement, her claims for damages, and even parts of her privilege logs. And that's ironic, considering Blake's been the one filing motions to compel against Wayfair's privilege logs and redactions, the exact same issues they're now accusing her of. So yeah, it's going both ways. It really makes you wonder if Blake keeps filing these retaliatory motions just to push back whenever something happens behind the scenes that ticks her off. But regardless, the biggest battle in all of this centers on one thing: the sequel. It starts with us. Wayfair has insisted from the very beginning, and even after their main complaint was dismissed, that this entire case is just a setup. That the sexual harassment claims, the so-called protections, all of it, were crafted by Blake to take full control of the film, so she could direct and produce the sequel herself. It starts with us. So, in order to prove to Sony that she was capable of directing the next film, Blake decided to take full control. She thought she could essentially take it away from Wayfair, the same way Ryan Reynolds took Deadpool from director Tim Miller. Remember that story? Ryan and Tim clashed creatively during the sequel's early development, and eventually, Tim quit, worn out from dealing with Ryan's control. Blake's team seemed to be following that same playbook here. They were likely hoping Justin Baldoni would cave and hand the sequel rights back to Colleen Hoover. But there was one major problem: Colleen had already sold those rights. She sold the rights to It Starts With Us not long after releasing the book, and way before it became the bestseller it is now. And since she'd already sold It Ends With Us to Wayfair, she sold the sequel rights to them too. According to attorney Brian Freed, the sale was complete and final. There wasn't any hidden clause, no morality condition, nothing that could void the deal, no matter what anyone did afterward. It was a flat-out sale. Whatever terms were agreed upon, that was it. Colleen got her payment, and Wayfair owned everything outright. Meaning, she could never get the rights back. No loopholes, no buyback option. It was done. But that didn't stop Blake from trying to plant seeds, making Colleen believe there might still be a way to reclaim the sequel rights. Remember during the film's promotion, when Blake and Colleen did interviews together? Someone asked if they'd make It Starts With Us, and Blake said, "If Colleen has her rights, I'll follow her anywhere." The problem? Colleen didn't have those rights. If a sequel ever happened, it would have to be through Justin Baldoni, because he and Wayfair owned it. And that's where another tension started. Baldoni had already changed It Ends With Us for the film adaptation. In the movie, he cut out Ryle completely by the end, a big departure from the book. In Colleen's original story, Lily and Ryle co-parent. They live together while she's pregnant, and even after everything that happened, she doesn't go to court, doesn't restrict visitation, doesn't ask for supervision. She just accepts it, believing he'd never hurt their child. But in the film version, that dynamic disappears, and that choice, among many others, is where this entire fight over control. She doesn't do anything. She just says, "I know he'd never hurt our child, that's why." And that's it. She allows visitation. But we all know, that's not why. In the book, she never goes to the police, never goes to court, never takes any legal action. She simply lets it go. And that caused major backlash from domestic violence shelters and experts, who had to come forward and say, this isn't how it works in Massachusetts, where the story takes place. They had to clarify the actual laws, because yes, you absolutely can block a parent from having unsupervised visitation. You can even block a parent from having any visitation at all if there's been an incident of attempted sexual violence, like what Ryle did to Lily. With that said, let's move on. Because out of nowhere, Blake gets this wild idea that she's just going to sue Baldoni. This all happens after Mr. Reynolds reportedly offers millions of dollars to Baldoni for the sequel, and Baldoni refuses. He doesn't sell. It's his IP, and he has every right to keep it. In fact, back in September 2024, an article came out claiming Ryan was willing to pay millions to buy Justin out. But here's the thing, they made it sound like Ryan had some kind of stake in the sequel, like he actually owned the IP. He didn't. It was all careful PR. So now, there were only two paths they could take. Either sue him, like Blake is doing right now, or destroy his studio's credibility so badly that it'd be impossible for them to ever make the sequel. Almost like handing it over as a gift. Humiliate him. Crush him in the press. That's retaliation, plain and simple. They started examining her privilege logs more closely. Who seasoned Kent? Cami Aspar and Phil Singer. And here's where things get interesting, Blake's team claimed a common interest privilege with Colleen Hoover. But Colleen recently testified that she never even considered filing any kind of action against the Wayfair parties. So now, they're saying, this document has to be produced. Basically, Colleen was deposed, and during her deposition, she said she never had any intention of suing Wayfair. And honestly, the only thing she could have possibly sued for would be the rights to the sequel, since she had already sold the rights to the books. She wasn't part of the film itself, even though she was closely involved in the creative process. They didn't have to include her, she got a writing credit because she's the original author of the story, but she didn't write the script. She was busy working on her own projects and other books. She didn't have a production role. So really, what would she even sue for? Maybe the rights, that's the only thing that makes sense. Or maybe, Blake thought she'd sue over harassment, but we know that didn't happen. And since Colleen never planned to sue, that completely collapses Blake's claim to shared privilege. It looks like Blake was counting on Colleen to join her, to make the case stronger. She assumed Colleen's communications would stay protected under a common interest privilege. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, common interest privilege is a legal rule that lets people who share the same legal goals talk privately with each other and their lawyers, without losing confidentiality. Would you like me to continue with the next section of your script, after this part, keeping the same tone and pacing? This so-called privilege is something that Jed Wallace, Katie Case, Brianna Koslow, and Melissa Nathan have all used, because all of them have been tangled up in this legal mess together. It's worked for them at times since they are either witnesses or actual parties in the case. But Colleen? She's not suing anyone. She's not a party. She's completely separate. So here's how it's supposed to work. This privilege lets people and their lawyers share confidential information when they're working on a joint legal strategy, like a lawsuit or investigation. It's meant to protect communications between different attorneys whose clients share the same legal goal. It can also extend to the parties themselves, like Blake and Colleen, if they truly share a legal interest. But here's the catch, Colleen would have had to be seriously considering a lawsuit for that to count. And she testified under oath that she never even thought about suing anyone. That means there was never a shared legal interest to begin with. So they're saying Blake is using a privilege she's not actually entitled to, pretending she and Colleen had some sort of agreement to both sue Wayfair, when Colleen flat out said that never happened. Obviously, Blake's lawyers pushed back, saying this motion to compel was filed too late, that Wayfair missed the deadline and waived their right to get those discovery documents. So now, Wayfair is using all that, the Colleen situation, the missing documents, and those protections files, as part of the Melissa Nathan motion. But the bigger question here is, why? If Blake's throwing around legal designations like this, what did she ever think Colleen would even sue for? Did she expect Colleen to accuse Justin Baldoni of harassment? That didn't happen. Did she think she'd sue over a hostile work environment, even though Colleen was never an employee and had no contract with Wayfair Studios? Let's be real, selling the rights to your book isn't a job contract. It's a sale. You get a one-time payment, and the buyer gets exclusive rights to turn it into a movie. That's it. Authors typically have no involvement once those rights are sold. Wayfair actually went above and beyond by involving Colleen, giving her script access, casting input, even creative feedback. That's rare. Most authors never get that level of inclusion or spotlight when their books become films. So what exactly would she be suing for? The only logical explanation is that Blake believed Colleen might sue for the sequel rights. But since Colleen testified she never planned to sue at all, that means she has no interest, and no legal ground, to do so. It was a final sale. She knew that when she signed the deal. So she can't sue. And that means Blake's entire plan, this whole setup, the drama, the PR war, all of it? It's pointless. Think about it, if Justin had no intention of selling the sequel rights, and Blake convinced the cast that she could get those rights, that she and Ryan could produce the sequel with Sony and maximum effort. Of course some people would side with her. They'd see it as a career opportunity, the next film. But Justin's version of the story cut Ryle out completely. And in It Starts With Us, Ryle's character is essential, he's the antagonist, the source of the conflict between Lily and Atlas. He's what drives the tension in the story. Without him, the sequel loses its entire emotional core. So if Justin doesn't want to make it, and Colleen can't and won't sue for the rights, then there is no sequel. Simple as that. Blake gambled, and she lost. Everything she did, the legal push, the PR plays, the destruction, all for nothing. Because there's no lawsuit, no sequel, and no victory. So, what do you think about this? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, give this video a thumbs up, and as always, thanks for watching.